since my whole story started with house wiring problems first. I was using a cell phone. My wife was using a cell phone before that wasn't a problem. Cordless phones as well. But the wiring problems in the house was what broke the camel's back.
My returning guest today is Andrew McAfee. Andrew, welcome back to the EMF Remedy podcast.
Thank you so much, Keith. It's a pleasure being here.
Andrew's business is Home EMF Tracing, and that really describes exactly what he does. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But first, Andrew, I'm wondering if we could get an update on what's going on in Green Bank with regard to the initiative to save that as a place largely spared from synthetic field exposures.
Thank you, Keith. So we tried to get the legislation launched last semester, whatever you want to call it. So basically, it was too big, too much. So we took a pause and we're going to be reintroducing it this next session. So we're starting right now with Children's Health Defense with the various parties that are interested. We've been looking for a good lobbying firm and have been dialoguing with them and have some recommendations on, the county commissioners, the Pocahontas sheriff, all these people that kind of know about the law and have interests in the law. So we're cultivating relationships right now to, when we launch this thing, a lot of people need to be involved. So I've had a couple of meetings with the landowners locally, and everybody's fired up here, ready to go. So there are a lot of official things that still need to happen. So we're basically just ramping up for the next session.
Did you make the retainer that you're hoping for in order to engage the legal apparatus?
I am very pleased that we made the $15,000 within the 3-month period by our deadline, and we are good to go. So CHD is taken care of, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more funds that'll be needed for the PR firm in the future.
Well, that's great news, and good to know that there's still excitement and enthusiasm there locally to continue pushing on this. And speaking of Green Bank, you're in Green Bank right now, is that correct?
That's right. I'm sitting outside my shed on my property with my iPad on my on my dashboard of my van.
All right, great. And it's a wonderful day down there, you told me, right?
It is a beautiful day. Perfect. West Virginia has just some of the most gorgeous weather.
Wish I could be there. Still a peaceful place to stay.
Whenever the weather, right now there's a big hurricane or some storm, and whenever they push and pull the weather fronts, there's definitely a hum and a vibration that I can hear everywhere. So unfortunately, West Virginia is not immune from those global or large effects that, whatever you want to call it, NexRad, HARP, whatever the frequencies that are pumped around, they still come onto my property. Even though I'm 1,800 feet away from the power lines, there's still stuff coming in. But let me put it this way. It's much better here than it is anywhere else because the power grid kind of amplifies those frequencies and resonates with them. So I'm really far from the power grid. So it's the best here of anywhere.
Do you have an independent power system there, or are you tied to the grid?
I am tied to the grid, and I have an isolation transformer that is over 200, well, it's about 200 feet from the house. And my my transformer from the power grid is 1,000 feet from the larger lines, and it's all buried to that. And then I have a long stretch to my home. So my isolation transformer, and then another 200 feet, and then I have my electrical.
Oh, that sounds great. So underground, high voltage to the utility transformer, and then following that, your isolation transformer, and then your home. So at least you have some separation from all that's going on with the grid, especially with regard to protecting the ground, right?
Yes. So minimal current around me, and there are still everywhere on the whole continent, there are rivers of current that are return current, and putting ground rods down and horizontal copper rods to redirect that current around the house, and all my clients too. It becomes a really big part of my service is people will be feeling something. Oh, it must be a satellite dish or somebody's Wi-Fi. No, I'm dowsing right here, and it's boom, is a river of current. We redirect it. It's like, oh my gosh, it's gone. So the rivers of current from the power grid is a big thing.
Are you using like a section of a grounding rod to do that?
Right now, I'm taking copper welding rods, bronzing rods,
Okay.
and that's all I need. And I usually will start with them. They're very thin, and I'll lay them down and I'll wait for the response from the client and say, yeah, that worked. And so I'll come back and we'll reinforce sometimes with weather patterns or whatever it is. Sometimes the rivers will change or a new house gets installed. That's what just happened recently. I'll come back and douse. Oh yeah, we got a new line here. It shift a little bit. And then since it's working, I'll invest more money and put in thicker rods or more in-depth systems to redirect around the home. And it's basically like a checkerboard. Sometimes they're angled a little differently, but there's two directions.
And so do you just lay those welding rods down perpendicular to the flow on the
That's
ground?
it's exactly what it is. So the river of current is usually about 1 or 2 feet wide, something in this area. So we have, a rod there, and basically it comes to the rod, goes to the tips of the rods, and then disperses into the earth. So it's basically diffusing the power of it. Now we can get really crazy on how to redirect this current around it. You just don't want a complete circle. You can do a horseshoe, but you don't want to trap the current in it. So it takes a lot of time to just basically use. The first step is just redirect. How is the field? Great. I want more. We do more. And if it's enough, great, we stop. But you can get kind of crazy with how much money you do with all this grounding. But I'm in kind of little steps at a time.
And so do you use the L-shaped dowsing rods, or what do you like to use for
Yep.
finding those?
Yep.
And are
You
those
can use
are those welding rods as well?
these are actually I bought these are is it copper 101 or 110? I can't whatever the more pure is. And I just ordered the size and cut it to length. I actually made these so they would be pure copper. And just a little tubing, cut the tubing, bend the wires, and you're done. I mean, it's not complex. You could use a coat hanger if you wanted.
Do you, obviously there's a little bit of technique involved in when you're walking that you don't tip them because that's going to trigger those rods to swing in. Other than that, what are you thinking of when you're looking for those currents? Or do you have
Yeah,
anything going in your mind at all?
yeah, you have to hold intention because you could be looking for water or gold or whatever it is. Now, I'm not that good of a dowser. I've worked with dowsers that are extremely well intentioned. And basically, for me, the rods are so strong that I don't have to worry too much. But when I'm teaching somebody, yeah, you have to be very careful about the angle and all this other stuff. But to me, it's kind of like I could do it one-handed. It's like bang, it just hits really hard. And it teaches me a lot about a person because if your energy is flowing in your body and it's around your body, these rods will move. A lot of people have been traumatized and they shut the energy off in their body. So it's just like stone cold. It doesn't matter what you do. There's no energy flowing around their body and through the rods.
Be nice to have a seminar somewhere that people could come in and get taught how to do that and then run through with an instructor.
Yes, I would encourage everybody to do some sort of just any sort of workshop or masterclass with anybody just to start getting the energy flowing through the body and, just get something moving and then, work with me and we can specifically target what our topic is. A lot of people are just like well water dowsing, and a lot of it applies. It's very different than using witching, which is a piece of wood that's looking for water. But the metal rods can, with your intention, of course, can be very sensitive to anything electrical, which is water, which is the grid current. And you can basically call them the same thing because the grid current influences all conductive pathways. So what we're interested in here is looking for return grid current, which is, in my opinion, very easy to find because it's a checkerboard.
So I have a question about how do people who need help in the electromagnetic realm, people who are not involved in the business of EMF assessment, remediation, or your line of work, which is more the electrical system tracing. How do people get in touch with resources that are really going to be able to help them? You know, I have this sort of mental picture of a labyrinth that people have to go through from that first correlation. Well, I don't feel very well after I've been using my phone, or however that manifests. And then they go out on the internet and they get a bad answer from a search engine saying, yeah, don't worry about this. And then they find a little resource here and a little resource there. You've probably seen a lot of people go through that process. You have any thoughts you want to share?
Fortunately, the people that have advanced far enough to become interested in the electrical wiring part have reached out to me, and I've recommended my pathway and what resources I had, which is my Colt has some great videos on basic electricity, and I did an online course to get a residential electrician's career diploma, which is basically, it takes between 6 and 9 months doing an online course because I can't be in a classroom because the Wi-Fi just kills my memory. And then there are books, videos, but for what we're doing, I have developed books. Carl Riley was my inspiration because he had a very bad book, but it had extremely good information in it. And it was horrible to read. So I said, this is great. I'm adding a lot to it. So I called my first book EMF Tracing 102. So his was a tracing book. So I owe him a lot to Carl Riley. He was my mentor. So starting with that book and then Killing Current was sort of like, well, why are we even concerned about this? So then the book started rolling out. So I had to do a lot of education. And then why do we need to do a meter disconnect combo? So I started to talk more about house wiring to establish a foundation. But the actual learning about house wiring, you actually have to go with an electrician into a home. And every building biologist or every tracer can do that right now. And they should in their, helping people out. You're going to need an electrician, so you're going to be working with them. And if you get a nice guy, he can explain a lot of things. There's so much to learn. You got to start somewhere. And the best way is by seeing it in the real world.
What specific training products of yours would you recommend? I know you got a video series that's excellent. You mentioned Home Tracing 102 and Killing Current. So those two books at least, and then what else?
When you get into like understanding three-way switches, and I have a book on that too. It's a three-way something. And I have a book I wrote before that with parallel path magnetic fields. Now, this is sort of a fundamental primer, understanding wire carrying current creates a magnetic field. Now, how do we cancel that magnetic field? But how does that show up in a house? They have a lot of graphics, and we have little math problems and everything. You can find how much current's going in. So there's another book for that. And the problems in wiring in houses, it's kind of like I am dumbfounded many times. I can't expect new people to understand any of this stuff. So it's kind of like expect 5 years minimum of just doing this work so your brain rewires, read the books, go out there, ask questions, watch videos. Just understanding how a breaker panel actually works probably took me 5 years. So it's not intuitive.
EMF Tracing 102, Killing Current, the three-way, and parallel path mag fields. I like also was it 3-part or 4-part video series that you put out? That's a good introduction to that. Do you still have that available?
The power grid problem. I spent so much time on this thing, and it is, in my opinion, there are 3 parts, and each one's 1 hour. And there are very graphic heavy, very intense, lots of information. And I try to make it very human. There's some music in it. It's, to me, if you're going to be understanding the power grid, those videos get a person to like, oh, that's the problem. That's how it's configured. That's why we have so many problems. And it's like nobody wants to talk about the power grid because it's like sacred. But the power grid has to be completely redone.
Yeah, exactly. We have to stop passing current back through the ground, which
Yes.
we do in the majority of the current now. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not according to me, it's according to EPRI, the guys that are the big brother coaches to all the power companies, electrical power research. Their own research says 60 to 80% comes back through the earth.
And there's some people who say, well, what's the problem with magnetic fields? But I would say, okay, that's a synthetic field. It isn't part of nature. It never has been. Where and when has it ever been proven to be without harm or without physiologic effect?
Exactly. And it gets much worse. In more esoteric terms, there are many forms of energy. And the type of energy we are creating with man-made AC is the worst, most damaging, unhealthy form of energy that we could have done. It's kind of like, well, I'm not going to say it was intentional, but anyway, there's better ways of key, electrical force, plasma, whatever you want to call it, for use to be able to be healthy other than this electricity form of electricity that messes up the spins. And you're talking about magnetic fields especially. So the magnetic field cuts through it basically your whole body, and it induces voltages and currents and inside of everything. So it's extremely harmful, and people don't understand why it's so damaging because the standards are based upon preserving the power grid and defending the power grid. The whole 70s has proven that to us. So the standards are all off. The entire belief system is incorrect, but that's what people make money in that industry have to support. So we're out here going, we're getting sick from magnetic fields, and the whole entire industry is designed to, NIMBY, not in my backyard, sort of make us feel, stupid. So we have to go out on our own, get sick on our own to believe that, this is not right. We got to do it ourselves. And the magnetic fields, we should have no magnetic fields in our homes if the houses are wired correctly. And if you have a magnetic field, you got a code violation.
Above the ambient levels of the area. Yeah. If you have a differential in different areas of the home, that's really one of the telltales that you've got a wiring error.
And you're pointing out a very good point. If you turn off the power to the whole house, you still have a magnetic field. Yeah, that's grid. That's coming from the power grid because it's not on your land. So I call that not on your panel. That's a foreign source. So it could be a magnetic field from the overhead power lines or basically a loop in your neighborhood from the power lines. So yes, and there's current everywhere in the North American continent in the earth, then that creates a very subtle magnetic field, some more than others.
Yeah, and it's what comes with what we call electric service, right? And so it ends up being a forced exposure because of the unbalanced nature of that return current. You've got these wide area magnetic fields, like I say, never proven to be without physiologic effect. And
I totally agree. How a body completes a circuit, hand to foot, hand to hand, especially with children. This is what we have to focus on and direct it away from men with, tough, calloused hands. We're talking about the most sensitive part of our, world is children, and having children in bathing, tubs with copper pipes, or touching the refrigerator and completing a circuit with the floor or two different appliances, the dishwasher, whatever it is, anything that's grounded in the house has a voltage on it because it's attached to the power grid, it's attached to the neutral. And if that other part of the body touches something that's grounded as well, you complete a circuit. So microamps of current have been proven to be leukemia and cancer causing by the NIEHS. They came out with a number, and then EPRI said, well, that 1 millivolt per meter internally equates to even less than 1 microamp of current. If you have two places that complete a circuit and you have that gradient across your body, you will have a certain amount of current. And the way that energy rips all across, I have in my presentations, I have pictures that are put up that show the shadows of charge in the body, of current flowing. And it gives you a visual of, well, it's everywhere when it's traveling. It doesn't go just point to point. It's through that, it's taking every path possible. So putting yourself into a circuit is the most dangerous thing you can do electromagnetically.
So we tend to think of ionizing radiation as harmful and non-ionizing radiation as non-harmful, not you and I, but our culture at large. But when you have current flowing through the body, you're displacing electrons, right?
Yes,
Not,
thank you for bringing that up. Go ahead, finish.
yeah, and I'm not saying that that's exactly the same thing, but that is one of the fundamental differences between ionizing and non-ionizing radiation is the direct displacement of electrons. Is that right?
Yes, if you look at the definition of what is ionization or ionizing, it's the removal of a charge. It changes the charge of the molecule. So you remove an electron, this becomes more positive. Well, what is current flow? It's the removal of electron. So if you have this change of charge inside your body, you can think of all of the very extremely sensitive voltage gauge calcium channels, or just molecules or calcium molecules or something that's having the electrons rip off it. In fact, calcium and magnesium have a lower ionizing power, like it takes less energy to move them off than copper. And copper is the standard for electrical wiring. So how much current would flow on a copper wire? Even more would flow on these other mediums, or more electrons would be ripped, or at least as many. So we're talking about what is ionization, is we're talking about ionization is the ripping off of an electron, and that is current flow. So to me, current is ionizing.
And unfortunately, we don't have a control group. There's no parallel society that does everything that we do, except they don't have a current flowing through the earth. So we can't, at this point in history, we can't show, aha, look, these people fare well with regard to chronic disease. These people over here, they don't.
Well, it would be lots of fun to be able to have the luxury to have those control groups. Or like you said, the whole world is now inundated. And it's kind of part and parcel of what we're trying to do here in Green Bank is to keep the cell phone towers away, keep the 5G towers, keep all the wireless away, so we could have a control group. So in the future, when AI is everywhere and everything is completely automated and robots are running everything and automated cars and everything in the whole world, if this place was still pristine, maybe we could have a control group, but it's very difficult. This place is quickly being lost with more Wi-Fi routers, and we can talk about that more and more, but we're trying to fight to keep that back. But you're right, we need to have a control group here so we can compare. But with the power grid, that's a good question. I don't know any place that, has no effects from the power grid.
I had a couple of conversations with Professor Johansson, and in one of them, he mentioned he was excited about the fact he had done a study and felt that he had identified what might be the sentinel symptom for people who, I like to say, have an intact immune system that still warns them about synthetic field exposures. I like to put it that way. We might call them electrically sensitive. So I'm thinking about the work that you do, and it's very unique, where you go in homes and you're doing electrical system tracing. Do you think there's a sentinel symptom of a house?
I have a couple thoughts about that. Since my whole story started with house wiring problems first. I was using a cell phone. My wife was using a cell phone before that wasn't a problem. Cordless phones as well. But the wiring problems in the house was what broke the camel's back. So when I go into people's homes and I see high magnetic fields as the problem, yeah, maybe there's a certain type of there's always seems to be memory problem, some sort of mental acuity problems. If there are high electric field problems or, other kinds of stuff, I can't make a conclusive, you're going to have this category if you have this, and you have this category if you have this. But I can say that I believe a lot of electrically sensitive symptoms or stimulation can start from the house wiring, and then the other things will be added on. The Wi-Fi, the cell phone. Now, that's not in all cases, and I'm not going to say make a blanket statement, but I find this more often than not that there's a wiring problem in the house that's underneath a lot of electrical sensitivity.
And so, you know what I talked before about a labyrinth that people travel through and they're trying to get to good quality information. And there are a lot of well-meaning content creators out there that give the dirty dozen or, the top 10 or whatever it is, things that you can do to reduce your synthetic field exposures, unplug your Wi-Fi, go wired would be the next step, airplane mode if that actually works on your phone and on. You've heard all these things before. Nobody's talking about getting the electrical system in your house examined thoroughly to make sure that, I'll just put it this way, current is not flowing where it shouldn't.
Well, I'm trying to ring the bell. I'm on some Zoom call groups with some advanced building biologists and other experts. And I'm very annoying sometimes when I say, well, you're talking about filtering and you're talking about these other things. Did you do a panel diagnostic yet? Have you removed all the neutral ground continuities? Have you removed before we even talk about filters? So I am a little bit annoying on that. So I am pounding that because the electrical system in the house is a very difficult topic and it's hard. And I understand why people don't want to deal with it. And electricians don't want to address things that possibly they didn't even know and be looking stupid. So yeah, it's kind of like everything's against that, but that's where I have to start. And that's why I became an electrician, is because I fundamentally believe that's where we need to start the healing, is in our homes where we sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think it is so important to get out there and really examine closely the electrical system in the house and make sure that there aren't problems there. Because you can address all the RF radiation, you can make, dirty electricity filters, you can turn off some circuits at night. But until you address the underlying architecture, you're really missing something. You're not going to have a good foundation for the long term. That's my feeling anyway. Your thoughts?
I'm so happy to hear you say that, Keith. I think that's the right approach, and we'll get the best results as fast as possible, starting with, just get rid of the electric fields, turn off the breaker, boom, that you could do that right now for free. And then after that, your daytime exposures, like I had this one woman in Virginia, she was hearing the hum and these other symptoms, and she wanted some really big, grandiose things. And I said, I've got to start the first day. I'm going to come in and I'm going to find a code violation in your house, and I'm going to fix that. So I hired an electrician, came in there, and we found it. There was this nasty, really horribly creative, two circuits were brought together by some wire coming down to the child's play area, and it created this gigantic loop between the kitchen. And she felt better immediately, and the hum was reduced significantly. And then they started complaining, well, why haven't I fixed all the other things that she was complaining about? And I said, well, because I needed a code violation first to know I'm credible. The electrician believes me now. And two, I needed something that would immediately change the way you feel. And I did. So a lot of people get kind of hung up like, well, what about my dirty electricity? Well, what about, all these other things? Those are so low on the list. You got a gigantic magnetic field through a large swath of the house. That is going to ruin your day and ruin your night, the way you sleep and everything else. So, I'm totally with you. We got to look at those wiring problems.
Let's talk about what I call EMF exclusion facilities. So I think I first wrote about this about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And the idea is, there's two kinds of tests in the medical world. I'm not a medico, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. But I remember some things about, I had a friend in high school and they wanted to find out if she had diabetic tendencies. In those days, I don't know if they do this anymore, they gave her a bunch of glucose to drink. They took her blood sugar before and then at a certain amount of time and et cetera. And, I guess you could try to find out if somebody is wheat intolerant by doing something similar. But the other way to do it is to exclude. things from your diet, like exclude wheat and see how you do. And again, not medical advice or anything. So my idea is that every state in the United States needs to have EMF exclusion facilities where people could go, they could check in like a B&B kind of thing and have some criteria for what kind of exposure levels you're actually going to be getting there. Put your smartphone at home, leave it there, and then go and spend time in a pristine environment and see what happens. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that idea.
It is a perfectly wonderful idea. In fact, I'm trying to create that right now in Greenbank, West Virginia. Basically, I have on our website, greenbanksafehaven.net, that there are no low EMF housing available unless you are a private homeowner and we've worked together and we've created your own house. And unless you come and stay one of these people, there are no facilities. And that's a real problem because people are constantly calling us, one in very dire straits and desperation. Where can I stay? I'm driving around in my car. And other people like, well, I'm going to do a mold detox and I'd like to go someplace to get away from the EMF. That's great. We don't got anything until like very recently. We're remodeling houses right now where these people could rent a low EMF space. So I know how hard it is to create it here. Yes, what you're saying is absolutely needed and necessary for people to go to like a clinic to see, well, if I sleep overnight in this place, do I have all the indicators and markers all of a sudden just disappear? Because if they go home, everything comes back, right? So you can go away and, go on vacation and feel better and come back home and everything comes back. Or you can go down to Mexico and spend $5,000 or $10,000, whatever it is, and heal yourself of some horrible disease, then come back home and then you get your whole disease back. So, but what you're saying is we need to remove this one thing, and there's no places where you can do that. So I totally agree with you. It's absolutely needed.
Yeah, a lot of people who go down this rabbit hole of EMF and they start looking around and they say, okay, I have to have my mercury fillings removed. I have to get a hair metal analysis. I have to do, 3 different kinds of detox. I need to take essential oils, all these different things, but they don't take care of their environment and really get it to levels of each of the different synthetic field types down low enough to see what that alone would do. So I've been wanting to write a paper about this, but I think that's the thing. I really do think it's the thing.
It is such a huge thing. When I go back home to Raleigh, I have to take so much more magnesium and calcium. The teeth start to get weak, and all these other symptoms start to creep in because of the power grid. And I come back up here, it's like I don't have to take any vitamins. I sleep really well. I get up at 5:30 a.m. with the light, and it's like, oh my God, my body is responding so differently that I can't imagine people really getting how much electromagnetic fields are destroying their body until, what you said, until they can get away and go, all my symptoms are gone.
Yeah, that should be like a national priority to make sure is one within an hour or two drive from everybody. But I don't think I'm going to hold my breath waiting for that. I'm actually blessed in my county. There is a B&B that people can go to. That's where I teach my consultants. And so we have this beautiful, very low EMF exposure. You can't even get a cell phone signal there. And there's just incredible stories come from people who stay at facilities like that. So I just wish we could have them everywhere. In fact, sometimes I'll have a client and they'll be talking about wanting to do this and this. I say, well, why don't you go stay over here? I don't have a financial interest in that facility, but I'll say, why don't you go stay there for a week and then we'll talk. We'll see what kind of, remediation you want to do.
I totally agree.
All right, let's talk on a couple more things, and then I'm going to let you share how people can get in touch with your work and any final words you want to give. But data centers, this is the hot topic, and I think that I really underestimated because my first career was in high tech. I thought I knew what a data center was. I didn't know an AI data center uses 1 million gallons a day minimum of water, and the pollution aspects and the light and the sound and the infrasound below hearing. And then I had a conversation recently with Theodora Scorado, and she enlightened me about a Bloomberg paper talking about a 50-mile area of impact when an AI facility goes in, impact on power quality, which maybe we could talk about as like a subset of dirty electricity. So I don't think you and I have all the answers right now, but is there anything that you would like to say about maybe in this context? You know, if I'm sharing a transformer for my electric service with a neighbor who makes uninformed decisions, you know, for example, he's got dimmer switches, you know, on the low, you know, on the sort of bottom, or maybe worse, an electric vehicle and he charges it at home, or maybe he decides to get grid tied solar and make it, you know, even worse, or continuous in that way. So poor decisions or uninformed decisions made by others end up as forced exposures in some cases. And it appears if it's a 50-mile impact, a 50-mile radius on the power quality, boy, that's really an extension of that idea of, you know, maybe not doing things right and everybody has to live with it. So anything you want to say about data centers?
Well, this is the next thing. And so it kind of like it's waking more people up. And that's the good part. People that probably are already, you know, about magnetic fields and all this other kind of stuff. So my fundamental belief, yeah, I can say a lot about the dirty power, a lot about the hum, a lot about the power grid. And I'll say quickly about the power grid. Basically, it's going to be putting the triplet harmonics, which is 180, 540, the main, you know, the third harmonic and the ninth harmonic, into the ground, all the way back to the power station. So do the math, wherever that is, all of that area is going to be destroyed with higher you know, more harmonics, more noise on the lines, more loads, all that kind of stuff. But the upshot of all of this is, yeah, it's going to destroy neighborhoods. It's going to destroy lives. And it's going to raise a larger question about what is the purpose of life. And in my opinion, electrical sensitivity is just simply your body rejecting that order, that life. And it gives it an opportunity for people to wake up and reevaluate. You know, why am I going to work every day? What is it for? What are my children's careers going to? I mean, what are we doing? And so this is a great opportunity for people's lives to be destroyed, to wake up and break out of that system and say, no, this whole thing. And you look, like you said, the water. I mean, we're already in water restrictions and, you know, we're so monitored ourselves to not even flush, you know, yellow is mellow, flush, you know, brown, flush it down. And then these guys come in with $1 million, 1 million gallons a day. So what does that say? What it says is there's two standards. And if they're willing to do that, it's either going to destroy all of us. So it's an intentional destruction of everyone. So we have to create this as a systemic threat to humanity. If these things goes in, the power grid goes down, our water supply is destroyed. So these guys are actually, you know, it's dangerous. It's actually, and what is the purpose of the data center is to collect all of our personal information and store it and use it against us in the future. So are you going to allow data centers to go in and destroy your lives? My opinion is a lot of people don't care. They're going to get a lot of money off of it, and they're just going to ride the train, the gravy train, all the way until they get sick. So I'm just waiting. When you get sick, we can talk. And they're not going to do anything until people get sick. And I'm not going to talk to people unless they are already on the train with, you know, my wife's electrically sensitive, so I know there's something to this or whatever it is, because I can't talk people, and I'm not going to try to convince people out of a lot of money. If they're getting paid to do a job, if they're doing something to help the data center, there's no convincing them. There's no convincing an electrician of things he doesn't want to know. So for all of those that are like awake and that are, we know this is going to be bad. Well, maybe it's your time to like change careers. Maybe it's your time to pull your children out of college and whatever stupid arts degree they're getting and get them involved in this real thing. Because this is the moment in history, I believe, that we are all called to wake up and get involved to save the planet. Literally, human race is at stake. And this, how bad does it have to get for a person to see that?
And how will people know? How will they make that correlation? You know, you and I were fortunate. We were able to correlate the exposures that we were having with what was going on in our bodies, fix that, and all of a sudden magic things happened. But how many
Thank
people?
goodness, thank goodness for electrical sensitivity. Thank goodness for electrical sentience. So electrical sentience is the gift. It is
I
a gift. It's not an illness.
couldn't agree more. Absolutely could not agree more. Yep. So do you want to tease people about your next book? Maybe that'll light a fire under you.
Well, I've been chewing on this topic for a long time. What is electrical sensitivity? And I've been seeing a lot of dynamics with husband and wife. Usually it's the wife that's sick and or aware or whatever it is, and the husband that's, pry it out of my cold dead hands. And what is it that we can do to raise awareness that this is not an illness, but this is a healthy response to a sick environment? So I've been, relationship coaching, that kind of things. I've been in a lot of therapy and I've done a lot of men's group weekends. So I know a little bit about this. But even when I talk to my wife about this, she says, Andrew, you can't say that in a book. But
Say it.
but I am, because it challenges the fundamental nature of what it is to be human. Are we going to stay together or not? And how we're going to work through this? And what are we going to, what is the reality? And people just don't want to face reality. So for those that are willing to do the work and want to transit their life away from whatever they're doing into something new, I'm trying to create a book as kind of a, tippo. It's not crazy. And this is the moment you've been waiting for, to finally be real, to finally live life the way that you've wanted to when you were a child, but you got sucked into the mortgage and sucked into this whole matrix that took you away from your soul. So I'm trying to help people make that transition and understand the transition and what it is. How can I make a negotiation with my husband or my wife in order to get through this? It's just simple steps that we'll just make some simple agreements that, I'll do this, you do this. Great. We're happy together, rather than making it so much, oh my God, it's so difficult. The dynamics are so laden. It's just, I see the people are just destroying each other.
Now that sounds like a great book. Now hurry up and write it so I can get a copy. But you touched on a lot of really interesting things there. So the whole fact that somebody, the reality of it is that somebody's just noticed that they're living in a toxic electromagnetic environment. They've been given that awareness. And if their spouse is not on board, oh man, it can get very difficult, because the spouse just wants to continue the way things have always been. Maybe make a little change here, a little change there. They don't understand typically that what's really going on is this is an invitation to live life more abundantly. Maybe let go of that crappy job that you have. Do what you really want to do. Embrace a new way of living. And I have seen many people who do make that transition and it goes beautifully. And I have seen people who are just, they don't want anything to do with it. And like you say, if you've got that one spouse looking at his smartphone, his smart device, and saying, nope, you're not going to get this out of my cold, dead hand.
I've come up with sort of some pat answers. The herd mentality, you got some really great Boy Scouts that uphold the herd mentality. This is the group think, and we got to stay in the herd, because if you leave the herd, you're a sick cow and the whole herd attacks you. So you got these dynamics that are underneath people's thought processes. I have a job and I'm going to need my cell phone to do my job. And as a male, you're not taking away my cell phone because that's my ability to do my job. So the link together with being a man to provide the cell phone is a part of my purpose. So how do I deliver my product? So we need to be really creative about, well, it's not going to sabotage you to do this one tiny thing, but you can still be a man, you can still deliver. So you have these multi-layered belief systems and value systems that snap into play with a cell phone. It's quite a miraculous device. But when people, like with drinking or a drug, you pull it away, boy, does the beast come out. And then all of these value systems. So reevaluating all of a person's fundamental belief systems and the way that they um, operate and what is important to them in life, and reprioritizing. So it's therapy. You really have to rethink your life because your family is at stake, your children at stake. But the cell phone sort of like all of a sudden jumps in and replaces. Anyway, you know this as well. You've talked great conversations about this, so I'll leave that expert conversation to you.
No, I'm here to hear your thoughts. So thanks for sharing that. How can people get in touch with you?
My website, homeemftracing.com, has basically an appointments page. And on the top of it, you'll see that it basically says, I'm not taking clients anymore, except for those that are interested in moving to West Virginia and be in the radio quiet zone. But I'll do Zoom calls on the weekend. So if you want to have a FaceTime or talking and get some coaching on the weekends or sometime, we will set up a Zoom call. So on my appointments page, that's how you get a hold of me, on homeemftracing.com. And that's the best way to go about it.
Are you still making time for your music?
I have one loyal horn student who's been seeing me for 20 years now. We just had an anniversary of 20 years. So pretty much every week we'll get together and we'll have a lesson. And I still conduct the Nutcracker with a Triangle Youth Ballet every Christmas.
Wonderful. That's what I call balance. Fantastic. Andrew, great to have you back. Thanks for making time for this. And I just really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Keith. And you have to know what a great speaker you are, a great interviewer you are, your personality, your soothing voice. And I want everybody that's listening to go listen to all of your podcasts that you've done for at least the last 6 months. I mean, the people you've interviewed, the topics you've covered, the way you've covered it, it's absolutely transformational and fundamental. And I hope that, whatever level of understanding you are, if you're a brand spanking new beginner or even the most advanced, whatever you want to call her, electrician or a diagnostician, you handle things beautifully. You present them just in a soothing and gentle way. And you are building a really sane culture out of this really barbed, angular mess. So thank you for your healing therapy.
Very kind of you, Andrew. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.